people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
News. Okay, we'll start with this. This past weekend in El Paso, Texas, Stephanie Hahn took on Miranda Reyes to advance to a professional record of 9-0 in what was a spirited contest, a spirited fight where Miranda Reyes was definitely the aggressor and Stephanie Hahn was the defender. We are finding out more about this fighter, that she can move and punch, fight from the outside, set traps, land counters. I was at least right to assume that Miranda Reyes is a bit stronger in the pocket, stronger mid-range to inside than Stephanie, and that's likely why Stephanie chose to create space and try to box from the outside behind the jab and counter. Yeah. Miranda's very good on the inside, so you don't want to let her get there. Noticeable cut around the right eye of Stephanie Hahn. Cut looked to be just on the side of Stephanie Hahn's eye, which isn't the worst place for a cut. It's a lot worse if it's on the eyelid than above the eye, just above the eye, or around the side. Wasn't easy for Jennifer Hahn, as this was definitely a bull and matador situation, a bull and matador kind of deal with a very strong fighter. Persistent. But she did manage to win a points decision in what was a hard-fought fight, advancing to a professional record of 9-0 and inching closer towards fighting for a full-fledged title, in Stephanie's case, the WBA title, as she's currently ranked at number 2. Number 2 in the WBA's rank standings, behind Canada's own Jessica Camara. Jessica Camara is going to be returning to action very soon in defense of what is her WBA gold title, a lesser version of the WBA title that Katie Taylor still holds at this weight. So it's conceivable that we've seen the last of Katie Taylor as a lightweight. She's currently undisputed champion at super lightweight, and I don't see much reason for her to come down. So sooner or later, she's going to drop that WBA title. And when she does, the next WBA champion may be crowned between Stephanie Hahn and Jessica Camara. Things are moving fast for Stephanie. Things are happening. Things are starting to happen for Stephanie Hahn, and they're happening fast. She debuted as a professional in October of 2021 at 31 years old. A little over 3 years later, she's already knocking on the door of a world title opportunity. And Jessica Camara, she would be facing an even more experienced fighter than the one she just faced in Miranda Reyes. Jessica Camara's been around a while, been around the block. She's won some fights, she's lost some fights, but she's a solid fighter, serviceable, and will provide an even stiffer acid test for Stephanie Hahn as she climbs up the ranks than the one she just had in Miranda Reyes. That actually makes for a really great fight if and when the time comes, and it looks like it's going to, as Jessica's ranked at number 1 and Stephanie is ranked at number 2. The landscape is changing, where Katie Taylor, for a very long time now, ruled this division with an iron fist, bottlenecking all of its fighters to her. Now, Rhiannon Dixon is WBO champion, Beatrice Ferreira is IBF champion, and the next WBA champion will be decided between Jessica and Stephanie. Whoever wins between those two, whoever goes on to become WBA champion, that's going to become a race between Boxer and Matchroom to secure their fighter or fighters that WBA title, which could result in either a unification match for Carolyn Dubois or Rhiannon Dixon or Beatrice Ferreira when she's done at the Olympic Games. You can expect all of this to take place within this calendar year and going into the next one. The next wave of lightweights, lightweight champions are here, and the landscape is effectively changing. Congratulations to Stephanie Hahn for advancing to a professional record of 9-0 this weekend, and she's on the cusp of becoming a world champion. Things are about to get very serious for her. In men's super lightweight news, WBA champion Pitbull Cruz's campaign as Mexico's most quote-unquote loved fighter heads to LA.
He's Mexico's most loved fighter. Since when?
Los Angeles. The way Isaac Pitbull Cruz sees it, his fights are an extension of a lifetime contract with his fans. At just 26 years old, Mexico's new WBA champion displayed the strength of the powerful bond with his fan base on March 30th, when the allegiant crowd cheered more heartily for Cruz than even the main event participants Sebastian Fundora and Tim Tszyu in their unforgettable bloodbath for the unified junior middleweight titles. Cruz, 26-2 with 1 draw and 18 knockouts, was hailed above all, and he leaned deeply into that roaring appreciation to execute complete destruction of outgoing, trash-talking then-champion Rolly Romero by way of an 8th round knockout.
That doesn't make him Mexico's most beloved fighter. Not right now. Not if he's still fighting on undercards instead of headlining his own shows.
I don't deny that Isaac's star power has grown in the subsequent 2 years that have followed his decision loss to Gervonta Davis, but it's a gross overstatement to say that he's Mexico's most beloved fighter right now. If he were, I think he'd be main eventing his own shows.
Just a suggestion.
A hunch. The same type of takeover is likely Saturday night at the BMO Stadium in LA, where Cruz makes the first defense of his belt against the game Mexican-born contender Jose Rayo Valenzuela, in the co-main event to another junior middleweight title fight pitting WBA champion Israel Madrimov against unbeaten 3-division champion Terrence Crawford. Believe me, we are the main event.
No, you're not.
You weren't the main event for Tszyu versus Fundora. You weren't the main event in that show, and you're not the main event in this one. Money talks, folks. Money talks, and bullshit walks. If you were the kind of draw here and now that could headline a show, you'd be headlining a show.
I personally think Isaac's ego and his team's is out of control, and it's been out of control ever since the Gervonta Davis fight.
Believe me, we are the main event. Everyone in LA is coming to this fight for Pitbull-Mania, just like Vegas came out for him March 30th. Cruz's advisor, Sean Gibbons, said it's going to be a Mexican crowd, and you'll see exactly who the main event is.
But you're not the only fighter of Mexican descent boxing on that show. Andy Ruiz is boxing on that show. And you expect me to believe that none of the people that are going to be there, none of them, are there for Crawford.
What are you being so hard on Isaac for?
Because I don't think beating Rolly Romero, of all people, for a title he shouldn't have had anyway, I don't think that makes you Mexico's most beloved fighter.
What I do inside the ring is for the fans, for them to be happy, Cruz said. In the end, that's the connection between myself and the fans, because we know what we give each other. When they come to see me fight, I want to give them what they came to see. That's why Cruz sees no reason he won't capture the evening again from the American and Uzbekistan main event combatants who have yet to prove they can fill a non-hometown stadium without secondary support.
And what non-hometown stadiums has Isaac Cruz filled?
You understand that he was an undercard fighter before he fought Gervonta, and he's still an undercard fighter now, that if you really had that kind of drawing power, you would have been headlining your own shows all this time, and you haven't.
So cut the shit.
And why haven't you been headlining your own shows? Because you don't have that size audience yet, and frankly, who you've been fighting...
Gamboa? Cabrera?
Why not? Let's go and steal the show, Cruz said. That's why I've been working so hard, training in Mexico City, as his nickname suggests. Cruz is a vicious punching fighter when unleashed from his corner. His ferocity and volume of punches with ill intentions overwhelmed Romero, and Cruz is confident he'll experience similar success against Valenzuela, 25, despite the contender's Mexican origin and the fact he's been in with expert trainer Robert Garcia for 4 months.
Oh, he's with Robert Garcia now.
Valenzuela, in a recent boxing scene story, made quite a case that his career experiences and the timing of this bout make it feel as if he's destined to pull the upset. And he might.
Why?
Well, let's call a spade a spade. Even though Isaac Cruz is WBA 140-pound champion, all he did at 140 pounds was beat a 135-pound fighter in Rolly.
That's it.
It's really not like he's amassed a whole lot of experience over time there. He's only been there a short while, and now he's fighting yet another 135-pound fighter.
But he's taller and he's longer, with power of his own, and in my opinion, a better corner.
To that, Cruz delivered a cold, fierce expression. Beyond his highlight reel knockouts, see Diego Magdaleno, Cruz volunteered for a lightweight title shot at Gervonta Davis and went the distance with him in a narrow defeat by decision in December of 2021. Since then, Cruz has reeled off 4 consecutive victories, his popularity and likability surging with each triumph.
Look, what I have accomplished so far has been hard, Cruz said. Whatever Valenzuela has said, he can say, but I am not giving up what I have worked for. Cruz is actually reaching for greater stature. When he first claimed the 140-pound title, his fellow champions were Teofimo Lopez with the WBO, then unbeaten Devin Haney with the WBC, and dominant Puerto Rican power puncher Subriel Matias. Since then, Haney suffered 3 knockdowns to a performance-enhanced Ryan Garcia in April, a no contest that ultimately led Haney to vacate his WBC title and left Garcia suspended for what remains of this year. Matias was then upset by Australia's Liam Paro, and here we are.
A victory on Saturday would effectively transform Cruz into the king of the 140-pound division.
Wait, so he would be the king at 140 over Teofimo Lopez, who's literally the lineal champion?
I may not be the king, but if I win this fight, my presence will be known, Cruz said. People will be like, this is the troublemaker in the 140-pound division.
I disagree. I think the troublemaker, the one who upsets the apple cart at 140, is actually Liam Paro,
not Isaac. In the subsequent 2 years that have followed his points decision loss to Gervonta, Isaac didn't do anything you didn't expect him to do. Isaac didn't beat anyone that you didn't expect him to beat. Whereas Liam, who the hell expected Liam to go to Puerto Rico and beat the Puerto Rican champion? On points!
Outside of a few wide-eyed Aussies, who was expecting that to happen?
There's nothing unexpected about what Isaac Cruz has been doing the last 2 years. Cruz fighting often and showcasing the entertaining style that he's flashed against Gervonta Davis and Rolly Romero and others is creating a successor to the Mexican greats of the past and declaring victory on this stacked, likely, heavily watched Saturday card will only boost his cause.
I think they're getting carried away because there's another Mexican national, another Mexican-born fighter that actually does headline his own shows. And I'm not talking about Canelo, I'm talking about Jaime Munguia.
Look, I feel really privileged, happy, and excited by the fact that people feel this way about me, Cruz said. When that adoration is said, that means I need to give them a show every time out. That's what the people want. I'm going to give them what they want.
I don't think Isaac is the heir apparent to the Mexican throne of boxing right now more than Jaime.
Of course they want a knockout, and Valenzuela was floored in the 3rd round by Edwin De Los Santos 2 years ago. Valenzuela admits he believes Team Cruz think he's chinny. I don't prepare for a specific round. I prepare for all 12 rounds and to fight at the best possible level, Cruz said. Says God willing, he'd like to fight again this year, expressing an openness to meet WBA lightweight champion Gervonta Davis in the fall in a rematch if Tank fails to negotiate a title defense in the next few weeks. Another lightweight champion capable of moving up in weight is unbeaten WBC champion Shakur Stevenson, but Cruz frowns upon Stevenson's evasive style of fighting. Nobody really wants to fight against Shakur because he puts you to sleep, Cruz said. Watching him fight is like going for a nap.
This coming from an undercard fighter.
That's not the case with Mexico's top-ranked contender, William Zepeda, who on July 6th scored a 3rd-round knockout of left-handed Giovanni Cabrera, who went the distance with Cruz in July of last year, with Cruz claiming a split decision triumph. Yes, totally. I respect Zepeda, and if he wants to take the challenge and risk of going up to 140 pounds, like I did, then let's make it happen, Cruz said. Until then, Cruz heads to Saturday with a plan to keep his profile a boundless enterprise.
Boundless enterprise?
Let me tell you one thing about Isaac Cruz. The only reason he made it this far is because they had to get extra creative with the matchmaking following the Gervonta Davis loss.
You fought the weakest, and I mean the weakest champion anywhere at or around these weights.
So the idea that because a couple of people like you, you're all of a sudden the heir apparent to the Mexican throne of boxing after Canelo Alvarez is gone, yeah, I don't buy it because you're not good enough. if you were, you would have fought better people in the last 2 years.
You would have looked better against Giovanni Cabrera. William Zepeda looked a lot better against Giovanni than you did. Who did you beat that he can't beat?
Rolly?
Because William Zepeda couldn't beat Rolly? You're dreaming.
And look at who you're fighting now. You're fighting a 135-pounder in defense of your 140-pound title when you have a mandatory installed.
Ishmael Barroso.
We know that Ishmael is going to be fighting in Japan on the undercard of Inouye's next fight, but Isaac's fight with Rayo got made before that fight got made. So if you wanted to take care of business as a defending champion, you would have been fighting Ishmael, not a guy who got knocked out at 135. I see what you're doing.
You don't like the Rayo fight?
No, I like the Rayo fight, but I don't have any illusions about why they're fighting Rayo.
Because he's a 135-pounder, not a 140-pounder, because he's been knocked out at 135.
I'm not stupid.
You've only made it this far by being creative.
You don't need a perfect record to be a draw.
No.
Canelo Alvarez doesn't have a perfect record, and he's the biggest draw in the sport right now. So you don't need a perfect record to be a draw, but you do need to be able to win your big fights, the big ones. The biggest fight Isaac's ever had is a fight that he lost.
On the premise of doing better than anybody expected him to do, mostly because nobody even knew him going in, they've turned their nose up at everyone.
And let's be honest, as much as he's mentioned some other fighters at or around these weights and some other champions, we all know what he has his heart set on. Another Gervonta Davis fight. So what would it do to his momentum if he lost that one? If he lost the rematch, lost again? Is it still going to be Pitbull-Mania? And the other fights with the other fighters? How many of those fights would he win? You know, I think William Zepeda would beat him because I think William is better with that base style, that pressure-fighting base style, than Isaac is. That's why William stopped Giovanni and Isaac couldn't.
I think William beats him.
Alberto Puello beats him, newly crowned WBC 140-pound champion Alberto Puello. I think Puello would beat him. I think Lopez would beat him.
Teofimo Lopez.
Isaac Cruz is not a legitimate 140-pounder. He was very small as a lightweight. He's even smaller as a super lightweight, and perhaps that's why he hasn't fought one yet.
And isn't about to.
Whereas Lopez is more seasoned, more proven at this weight. Not that I think a fight between them is going to happen. I don't. But if it did, I'd back Lopez to win that one. I would. Isaac's too simple, too basic, and he's tailor-made for Teofimo. And the guy he's about to fight, who says he's going to beat Rayo? I don't know that.
Rayo's got a better corner than you do. You think Robert Garcia hasn't seen a million fighters like Isaac before?
I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Isaac wins this weekend, and if he doesn't, what does that do to his stock? What does that do to his marquee value? What is supposed to be Pitbull-Mania?
See about that.
And that's the point. Before you tell me that he's the heir apparent to the Mexican throne of boxing, we have to evaluate his chances against his contemporaries, many of which he hasn't fought.
The only one he has fought beat him.
The one he wants to fight again, and if he loses again, so much for Pitbull-Mania, because you do have to be able to win your big fights, at least some of them, not all.
You've only got one.
And you've only gotten this far because you created a bubble around this guy. Who knows what would have happened if they would have been a lot more ambitious with the matchmaking the last 2 years? We might not be here now.
Bottom line.
Those eggs need more bacon.